There's no verified historical record of Johnny Carson ever sitting down and naming an official ranked list of the 8 most beautiful women to appear on The Tonight Show. That's a fun premise for a video, but it isn't something that actually happened, and presenting invented quotes as if Carson said them wouldn't be honest storytelling. What follows instead is a grounded, well-documented look back at several of the actresses whose Tonight Show appearances did become legendary, verified by air dates, contemporary reporting, and the interviews themselves, and the real reasons those moments still get talked about decades later. For 30 years, Johnny Carson sat behind a desk in Burbank, California, and hosted the single most influential interview show in American television history. Presidents dropped by. Comedians built entire careers off 5 minutes on his couch. And a rotating cast of the era's most famous actresses walked out from behind that curtain to trade banter with the most careful, most controlled interviewer in the business. A handful of those appearances became genuine cultural events, moments people still pull up on YouTube 40 or 50 years later, not because of gossip or invented drama, but because something real happened on that stage. A first-time guest who'd never done television before. A screen legend who'd avoided the format for 3 decades. A newcomer whose face was, for one specific year, inescapable in American culture. This is the story of 8 of those appearances, told as accurately as the historical record allows. Raquel Welch's relationship with The Tonight Show wasn't a single dramatic entrance. It was a decades-long one. Documented appearances stretch from a February 1969 sit-down, recorded from Los Angeles, alongside guests Jack Carter, Frank Sutton, and Vic Damone, through a widely remembered March 5, 1974 visit built around her CBS special Really Raquel and her role in The Three Musketeers, all the way to a 1988 appearance opposite a then up-and-coming Jay Leno. That kind of longevity tells you something the anecdotes alone can't. Welch wasn't a one-off sensation. Carson's producers invited her back across nearly 2 decades, which in the world of network television booking is its own kind of endorsement. By the time of her 1968 interview, in which she directly addressed being labeled a sex symbol, a clip still circulated today, Welch had already built a reputation for handling that subject with more directness and self-awareness than the era's celebrity press usually allowed her. What made her repeat bookings work wasn't just her looks, which were, by any measure, extraordinary and heavily documented in the entertainment press of the era. It was that she was a working actress with an expanding filmography, 1 Million Years BC, Fantastic Voyage, The Three Musketeers, for which she won a Golden Globe. And Carson's show, unlike a lot of its competitors, tended to let famous women talk about their actual careers rather than treating them purely as visual attractions. Welch used that space. Across her various appearances, she discussed her films, her upcoming projects, and the particular pressures of being one of the most photographed women in the world at a moment when there was very little cultural language yet for having that conversation. On February 27, 1979, Sophia Loren sat down with Johnny Carson for a conversation that has aged remarkably well. Footage of it still circulates widely, tagged by clip compilers with a description that gets right to the heart of why. Loren talking about growing up in wartime Italy, her approach to acting, and how she built her career. That description isn't marketing spin. Loren's childhood in Naples during the Second World War, a period of real hunger and hardship that she has discussed in interviews and her own memoirs across her career, gave her a life story that stood apart from the standard Hollywood arrival narrative. By 1979, she was an Academy Award winner for 2 Women. In 1962, still the only Oscar for Best Actress ever awarded for a non-English language performance, with a career that spanned Italian neo-realist cinema and major American and international productions. What the Carson interview captured, and what makes it still worth watching, is the contrast between the glamour of an international film icon and the substance of what she actually had to say once the cameras were rolling. It wasn't a 5-minute publicity stop. It was a genuine conversation between a skilled interviewer and someone who had lived through more than most guests Carson ever hosted. The rerun of that episode was popular enough that NBC brought it back as part of a Best of Carson broadcast the following year, a fairly reliable signal, in the television business, that an interview had connected with viewers the first time around. Bo Derek's first appearance on The Tonight Show came on November 2, 1979, just weeks after the release of 10, the Blake Edwards comedy that had, almost overnight, made her one of the most recognized faces in the country. The film's cultural footprint was enormous and immediate. A perfect 10 became a phrase people used in ordinary conversation, a rare instance of a single film performance reshaping the language. What's notable about that first Carson appearance, preserved and still watched today, is how directly the conversation went. Rather than tiptoeing around the film that had made her famous, Derek and Carson discussed the movie plainly, including her decision to film